Hello, and welcome to Brassy Business Podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly with business owners and what they have done to make their businesses shine. I am your host, Halie Ruff, and let's talk business. This week is going to be a little bit different. You're going to be hearing from me and me only, but you're still going to be hearing about a business. So I'm going to talk about my very first business, and its name is Rusty Soul. It was a women's and children's boutique, and it also had Western decor items. Rusty Soul started as a way for me to contribute to my family, but still stay home and raise my children. So I'm going to take you back into April of 2015. When it started, I had recently got married, and a wedding gift that we got was an R for Ruff. And it had cowhide on it, and these had these really cool tacks on it. And I was like, hey, I could do that. So, did some research, spent under $200 and got myself some letters, got myself some scrap cowhide, got myself some tacks from, I think Joann's is where I got them from. And I started making these letters. And I did just the letters for about 2 years. Literally, I started in my living room, but I learned fairly quick that it made a mess. When you cut up cowhide, like you have little pieces of cowhide that go everywhere. And there was just cowhide all over my house. And I'm like, this is not working. So I then took it out into we have a detached garage at our house, and that's where I went, and that became my workshop. And from there, we started with just 12-inch letters. And then I ended up getting like 18 and 24-inch letters. So I had a whole bunch of different sizes. For a while there, I did picture frames. I absolutely hated the picture frames. I am not good with measuring things. Like, it's just not my area of expertise. I'm not great at reading a tape measure. If it's anything under a quarter of an inch, like, you're going to get a guesstimate because I'm not going to get it right. It's just not the way my brain works. And I quickly realized that my husband, who worked all day long, did not want to come home and cut out these letters for me. So I had to figure out how to do it on my own. And I got very good with the jigsaw, let me tell you. But I could not figure out how to do the picture frames on my own. I couldn't. When I first started the letters, I always stained them. And I also realized that one, they really didn't need to be stained. And unless I was sealing them, they always still kind of had the stain smell on them. So that was one thing that we changed. And I didn't stain them anymore because I didn't want to seal them. And it also took it to where I could get a letter done in, under an hour. To I had to stain it, and I had to let it sit for at least a day, if not two, and then come back and finish it. And the turnaround time was just not as quick as I was wanting because, you know, when the kids were little, I had to have a babysitter, or I could only do it during nap time. And it wasn't working. So I stopped staining them. And then eventually I stopped doing the picture frames unless somebody asked, because like I said, I could never get them to go together right. They had to be routed. There were just so many steps that went into making them, and I could not do a great product by myself. And while Nolan was great about helping me, he just wasn't always in the best mood about it, because I get it. He worked, from 6 a.m. to 5, 6 at night, and he didn't want to come home and go out into the cold shed and help me with that too. So I get it. So that was one thing that I kind of phased out, that I didn't do anymore, at least with the decor items. We did crosses. We also did ribbons for a while. I was approached a couple different times about like doing a pink ribbon for breast cancer awareness. And the one that stuck with me is that I was set up somewhere, and this is when I only had the decor items. And there was a mom who had this little boy, cute as can be, that was in a wagon, and they were out shopping at the show. And I think I had a breast cancer awareness ribbon there. And she's like, hey, could you do gray? And I'm like, yeah, what's the gray stand for? And she's like, it stands for brain cancer. My little boy right here has brain cancer, and I would love to have one of these in the house. And that's one that stuck with me. And I mean, he was probably 4, 5 years old, and I'll never forget it to this day. And that one, it kind of broke my heart that mom was having to deal with that, and that poor little boy was having to deal with brain cancer when he hasn't been here very long. So the ribbons were pretty special to my heart. I did a lot of them. Um, then I kinda just quit advertising that I did them, but that was what it was. But, yeah, I did the decor items all the way up until I sold Rusty Soul, and Shanna, who bought Rusty Soul, she also, still does them, and she's brought some really cool ideas recently. Cactuses are a cool one that she's doing now. The decor items are still going strong, and they're just such a unique piece to add to your house. So I had been doing the decor items for about 2 years, and as I was at shows, selling the letters and whatnot, I kept seeing that nobody had kids' Western clothes. Nobody. And I'm like, "There's a gap in the market for this, and somebody needs to fill it." And I'm like, "Well, why not you?" So, another $150 later, I got myself some adorable, cute little kids' clothes, and I will say that the market and the availability of kids' clothes has changed a lot since I started looking, in 2016, 2017. There's a lot more options now. When I started looking, I had to find brands and I had to kind of like style them in a special way, put them with cute little moccasins, and make them Western. As to now, some of the wholesalers are like specifically selling Western kid clothes, which is awesome. Like, I'm glad that it finally caught up. But that's what I saw. I saw that there was a gap in the market. So I brought on Western kids' clothes, and I was strictly kids' clothes for a long, long time. And then it was 2 or 3 years later after that, I had really grown our Facebook group, and there was a great group of ladies in there. But I kept hearing it over and over again like, "You've got such cute girl clothes. I wish you had cuter boy clothes." And it kind of just clicked like, hey, I've got all these moms in here that aren't girl moms, but they're boy moms, and they love, like, the community that I created. They loved the group, they loved being in there, but there was not a lot to offer for them, and I'm like, "Well, a way to deal with that need is to bring on women's clothes, and not only will it do that, it's going to increase our average order value because women's clothes are going to be just a little bit higher of a price point." So I brought on women's clothes, and I swore for years that I was not going to do that. And then, it all just kind of seemed to fit. And that's when I did. I jumped. I brought on women's clothes. And that's kind of when it was like, aha, this is the full circle. This is like what I was trying to get to. This is everything that I want to offer. I want the decor pieces, for whoever wants to put them in their house. I want somebody to be able to come in, and I want them to be able to shop for their mom, for themselves, and maybe find something for them too that makes them feel pretty, because sometimes as moms we don't always feel the prettiest. Like, it just happens, your body changes after you have kids. And I was always super careful to make sure that the pieces that I was buying were good for moms, that they weren't something that a mom would look at and be like, whoa, this is not something that a country slash westerny style person would wear. Once I got there, I really started pushing live sales, and I was still going to a bunch of shows. So online was big for us, and I was also, like I said, going to shows. I never considered myself a mobile boutique because I never actually, like, had a trailer that I specifically sold out of, but I did go to a lot of shows. I did a lot of little shows at the beginning, but I also did a lot of big shows, and we'll get into them a little bit. With how much product I had and how long it took to set it all up, I realized fairly fast that the little tiny, 2-day shows where you maybe only sold $1,000 worth of stuff maybe wasn't the best fit for me. And I kind of changed to doing big shows that were going to be like 4 to 10 days long, because the profit was just a little bit higher, and it made it worth my time to be there for that long, especially when I was moving more product. So that was one thing that I definitely kinda turned or pivoted in, was not going to all of the little shows. And I considered getting a mobile trailer and completely redoing one, and I mean, I had an enclosed trailer that I was working out of to transport everything, but we never took the jump, and when I say me, I mean me and Nolan, me and my husband, because while it was mainly me who was running it, like, he was there with me step for step, bouncing ideas off of, and whenever I needed something done, he was always the one that had to help me, but we looked at it. We even went and we looked at like materials to build it out, and it never felt right. And I'm very glad that we did it now because that trailer, we still have it and we use it as a job trailer now. So it's a good thing that we did it, or else that would have gone with the sale of the boutique also. And that's something that we retained and been able to utilize still. Definitely, there was quite a few things that, I tried over the years, and one thing that I can think of that specifically just did not work was like an influencer program for me. So I brand reps, excuse me, that's what it was. It's brand reps. So I chose 4 brand reps once, and they were all super nice people and they did a good job, but where your influencer marketing works a little bit different in like the adult world. In the children world, it just never quite, I never could figure it out. And the reps that I had, they did good, but a lot of them were still like sharing the same things that I were. And instead of going and posting it like on their own Facebook and posting it in groups and whatnot, they were posting it inside my VIP group, and it never worked out right. And I eventually just kind of killed that program and didn't do it anymore and found a little bit different way to go about it. So that was one thing that I did that definitely just it did not work. It did not work out for me. It did not it never came out to what I was expecting it to. And there's always something like that in every business, I feel like. And that was not just mine. In the retail world, you go to market. Not always. I mean, there are some wholesale sites that you can shop on and whatnot, but going to market is a big part of shopping and buying collections and whatnot. And the very first time I went to market, it was down in Denver, and it was the Wesa market. And this building was kind of old. It had been there for a while. Since then, it's actually the show's moved to Dallas. So that tells you something that maybe the facilities weren't as like updated and whatnot. But the very first time that I went, it was huge. Like, I know that we've talked about this a couple other times on the show, but it's just so hard to explain how big it is. And it's just huge. And everybody wants your money. And if you go in there not having a plan or not knowing what you needed, like I did the first time, like you can spend all your money before you even get through the first building. And I just remember after a while, we were just walking and walking and walking, and everything is looking the same. And they had a down escalator and an up escalator, and we were trying to get out of there to head home and whatnot. And I was trying to go down the up escalator to get out of there, and my husband just grabbed me by the elbow and he's like, "Halie, we have to go to the other side." It was just crazy. And the other big marketplace, like I talked about, is down in Dallas. And I went there a couple times while I still had the boutique. The first time that I went, it was in December when the NFR was down there. And there are some shops that are open all the time. And sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. It's just hit and miss. The first time I went and I loaded up on some jewelry. I loaded up on some things that would be good for the NFR because I was in one of the trade shows down there. And that building is big, but it's laid out so much better than the one was in Denver, where it's like 13 floors and then you have like your home goods in a different wing kind of. And the one in Dallas, or excuse me, the one in Denver was just all over the place. You had like a room here, you had a section here. It was just a little bit everywhere. But the second time I went to Dallas for market, that was really fun. I went all by myself. I stayed in a hotel room by myself. There are some wholesale shops like in like a strip mall type area, and one of them is one that I ordered a lot of my kids' clothes from, and it was fun to go there. I will say it was not what I was expecting. a lot of the items were all just, like, laid out on tables, and I was thinking it was gonna be more like a bin setup or, like, shelving and whatnot, and it was just, like, chaos, and I was like, "Wow, this is way different than what I was expecting." So, that was interesting. The real struggle that I found is, 1, everybody wants your money. Like, you walk in the booth, they want your money. If you're not huge and you haven't, like, established a relationship with these brands or you haven't bought from them a lot, there's just a lot going on and trying to figure out what brands are gonna work for you and what the right fit is, and when you see, like, a million different shirts, they all start to look the same, and I was not very good at narrowing down, like, this is the exact style, this is the exact shirt that my customers want. This is exactly what they're going to be looking at, to where for me, shopping online on some of the wholesale sites was a little bit easier because I could see it and I'd be like, "Oh, no, that's definitely not it." And then I would find my few brands that I really, really liked, and I would just scroll through their stuff. And another struggle about going to market was that you could order it and then they didn't cut enough and your order just gets canceled. So you order this stuff and you're counting on this stuff to come, and they told you, if you go in January and they're like, this will be delivered March 1st. That's when we'll get it cut. That's when it'll get delivered, and it just never shows up because they canceled it or they sold too much of it, or there's just lots of different things that I I sometimes struggled with that, where it's like, if I order it online, I know that it's in stock and I know that I'm going to get it. And denim was a big problem with that, to where they only would cut so many, and your big boutiques, your big stores, they're going to get their stuff first versus me who just orders one run. If they have to if they have to cancel an order, they're going to be canceling mine. And that was what it was, but it's a catch 22 where it's nice to see everything, and you can really establish some relationships when you do that, but if you're not a huge boutique, and I definitely was not huge, it was sometimes easier to order things online. So, if you've been listening for at least a couple episodes, you know that I always ask, like, what is one of the biggest problems or struggles that you see that your industry is facing? And I still pay attention to the boutique world. I still have friends in it. And one of the big struggles that I see right now is the Chinese companies that keep popping up. And the problem that I have with that is, one, they're it's crappy quality. Like, it's just not very good quality, and I buy things to last. I buy things to where I will keep them in my closet until they are out of style, like for at least 2 years, and I'm like, "Okay, maybe it's time that I actually get rid of this." And that just doesn't work for me personally. Like, I want high quality items that are not going to fall apart the first time that I wash them. But the other problem that I have with it is these companies will find a picture, let's say earrings, because I know that this has specifically happened to a brand down in Texas named Cheekies, and they make some beautiful jewelry. And you look into it, she's very upfront about um this happening to her and about the artists that she hires and whatnot. So she makes some beautiful jewelry and post it and they sell it. But what Sheen, Timu, what they do is they find a picture of it, they steal the picture of it, they recreate it, and then they sell it for a fraction of the price, to where she's selling this pair of earrings for $20. They're selling it for $2. So, one, it's not their design. Two, they stole it. And three, they are recreating it and making it for a fraction of the price. And it's just, there's no way to check them. And this was what really bothers me, because in the United States, we have trademarking, we have copyright infringement, but it doesn't extend past our borders. So where's the checks and balances here, to where their stuff comes in through customs and gets cleared right away, and the same business owner, Cheekies, that I was talking about, her stuff gets held up at the port. It's just, I have a hard time with it because I can guarantee that this individual, she employs Americans, she employs people, she pays her taxes, but yet she's not protected. And it's not fair. And I know that that can go into a big story, and I feel like there has to be a better way around it. What that is, I don't know. Maybe someday I'll go to Congress and we'll figure out a solution. But for today, that's just my 2 cents on it. So, on to a happier note, social media was a big part of my business. A big part. When I started with only a Facebook page, and then I added an Instagram a little bit later. And I will say that my Instagram was never something amazing. It was not. Instagram just wasn't my jam, still isn't to this day. I'll post some stuff on my own personal Instagram sometimes, and it's just mainly pictures of cows or my children, but that's besides the point. And then I added a VIP group, and that was where I sold a lot of my product at, was inside that VIP group. That's where I met some amazing ladies. Some people I'm still friends with today. I will meet, or I will run into people when I'm in Rapid City at the Black Hill Stock Show, and they'll be like, "Oh, hey Haley, how are you?" And it was customers of mine, and I still cherish all of them friendships and all of them people. So that was a very, very special part of owning that business, for sure, for sure. And then I had a Pinterest. The Pinterest was fun, and it was a fairly easy platform to maintain. I don't know if it was ever like super, super beneficial or did amazing in sales, but it was a fun one. I liked my Pinterest and TikTok. I did really good on TikTok. And I sometimes wish that I would have still had the boutique when the TikTok shops came up, because I would have totally capitalized on that and jumped on it. But I didn't, and that's okay. But I did love TikTok. TikTok was fun. I still like to play around with TikTok, I'm not gonna lie. One part about social media and our VIP group was I did a lot of live sales. And I mean, like, every Wednesday night for like 3 years. And I hated them. I hated doing live sales. Some people are really good with chaos. I am not. I worked from home, and I had a little live sale area down in our basement, but half of the time my husband was not home from work in time to make sure the kids were wrangled and whatnot. And I had naked kids running at me when I was doing a live sale. I had puppies that would come downstairs and watch. And one time, one decided to just go to the bathroom like 2 feet away from me while I was doing a live sale. You could hear the elephants, I call them, running around upstairs, and it just always felt like chaos. And like I said, some people are really good at embracing the chaos, and I am not. And I always got frustrated with it, and I never felt like they were amazingly good for my sales. I did them and I showed up, and I always sold some stuff, don't get me wrong, but I never felt comfortable. I never felt like, "Oh, yeah, I just love doing live sales." I hated them. I loved the conversations. I loved talking with my customers, but the monotonous of live sales, I absolutely hated. And some of my customers, if you're listening, you're probably gonna be surprised by that. And I loved talking with you guys, but the act of a live sale, I did not love it. And I kind of am happy for people now that the live sales are kind of filtering out, but yeah, they were definitely strong when I was still in the boutique business, but what do you do? So, hey guys, we're going to jump into an ad real quick. There's been so many times where we have been working on a project around the ranch and we just don't have the right supplies to get the project finished. Well, more than once, Sunderman Manufacturing has came in clutch to help us get our project finished. But now, not only do they sell agricultural products, they are now also a tube mill. Sunderman Tube, see what they did there? Sunderman Tube is your go-to steel tube mill in the Northern Plains, where you get 100 100% American made steel tube. They have 11 different profiles, amazing customer service, and they can cut your perfect length for the project that you're working on. Give them a call at 605 529 5470 and buy directly from the tube mill. Tell them that Halie with Brassy Business Podcast sent you when you call them at 605 529 5470. I sold Western clothes. Westerny things was what is in my life. That's my style, and that's what I sold. So, the NFR National Finals Rodeo is every December in Las Vegas. And it was a goal for mine from like the beginning to have a booth there. There's lots of different places that you can set up at. Cowboy Christmas was always like my big goal. And the show that I actually went to was like in conjunction with Cowboy Christmas, where this one was upstairs and Cowboy Christmas was downstairs. So I got kind of close, but let me tell you, it was not always a smooth show. The very first year before I even went, I was looking at our letter decor inventory and I'm like, I do not have enough. So I actually hired somebody and I paid them per letter to help me get the letter inventory up. And it was getting cold, and my husband had found a wood stove to put into the workshop where I would always do the letters. And it was the first day that it had got cold, and I turned it on. And little bit later that evening, I got done working, left, and I had bought wood that day. And my husband went to unload it for me because they were like 4 feet by 8 foot sheets. They were heavy, and like I could do it by myself, but if he was willing to help me, I wasn't going to turn down the help. And he opens up the door and gets hit with a wall of smoke. And it, I've told you guys this story already, but I burnt down my she shed, and I had all of my letter inventory in that shed when it burned. And some of it was salvageable, some of it was not. And some of it was ruined because of the water. Some of it, the smoke smell never came out of it. And that was heartbreaking. Like, I remember just standing in front of the building, as it's smoldering and just bawling in Nolan's arms because I was like, literally everything that you've been working for just went up in flames. Like, not even figuratively, like it's still smoking. And that was really hard. And that was the first year that I was going to the NFR. So how that worked was I would always go down by myself. I would always drive myself down. I would get set up. And then my husband would fly down like midway through the show and help me tear down and then help me drive home. Because by the end of them, 12, 14 days that I was gone, I was tired. And it's a long drive home. It's about 14 hours for us to get down to Vegas. And he would always help me. Well, the first year, we is when the junior NFR was still up there, up where the show that I was in was. And we decided to go to the final performance of the NFR. So we left everything where it was and came back the next morning. Little did we know that they were going to tear down the arena that morning. And we get there, and there is just a film of dust over all of the clothes. And I'm like, son of a bitch. Crap. So we're having to dust everything off as we're putting it in the trailer, and that whole first year was just chaos. And we're getting ready to leave, and my husband gets looking at the trailer and he's like, Halie, did you hit something? And I was like, I have no idea. Like, no, I don't remember hitting anything. I might have got a curb or something. And a flyleaf on the trailer had broke. And he's like, all right, it's fine. I got the part. We'll fix it. It won't be hard. He had put tools in the pickup that I needed before I left and whatnot. And we go to North Las Vegas and like on the outskirts of town. And we pull into this gas station and we're changing this flyleaf in the middle of the parking lot. And there is a blade cab that's up on a platform, and there's a homeless person inside this platform that is just watching us the whole time as we're trying to change this. And they had actually welded the bolts on so we could not get it off. And by we, I mean Nolan. I was just there for support, I was not helping. We had to call a like mechanic to come help us get the freaking bolts off. And when I had called them, they thought that I had said something was broke on the trailer door. So they sent the complete wrong truck. And they're like, oh, well, just kidding. Our shop's like 2 miles down the road. And my husband's like, here, let me just jump in with you. I know exactly what tools we need and I will grab them and, come back. So that trip, we were supposed to get home. It would have been probably about 10, 11 o'clock at night. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning when we finally got home. And that would have been 2018. So naturally, when your first year goes like that, you're like, hell yeah, let's do that again. So 2019 rolled around and I got a better spot. And that was a good show. That was a really good show. So naturally, when your first year goes that shitty, you're like, hey, let's do that again. Like I'm going to do that again. So 2019 was a lot better though. I had a much better spot right on the main aisle. Sales were really good that year and I did a little bit more with our booth and I just loved it. Like it screamed Christmas spirit because this is in December, remember? I had a friend come help me. Like I hit my sales goal, which was the most that I'd ever done at a show before and it was good. That was a good year. And then 2020 happened and Vegas shut down. They were not going to hold the NFR and it ended up going to Fort Worth, Texas. And I was like, oh, okay, this will be perfect. And everybody's going to want to go and see the stockyards when they're down there. So I'm going to go to that show. That was a big mistake. I should have stayed with the show that I had originally been with and gone to the convention center because I had heard that sales were phenomenal there and my sales were not phenomenal down at the stockyards. And everything was an upcharge there. Like Vegas knows how to put on shows like that. They have parking specifically. Everything has is included. Um you have specific parking for you and they have a good eye on all of your stuff. Like you don't have to worry about stuff getting stolen in Vegas. It's locked down and you have to present your specific card with a specific number on it to get your trailer. They might have to move one in front of it out with a forklift to get to yours, but it's safe. Fort Worth was not the same way. Everything was an upcharge there. To park your trailer was an upcharge. To park your pickup was an upcharge. To get internet was an upcharge. Everything cost more there. And it was so frustrating. And it adds up. Like you get looking at it and you're like, okay, so they're going to charge me $200 to park my trailer here. That's fine. I will just park it at the hotel. Dumb mistake on my part. And so that's what I did. I parked my trailer at my hotel. And in the middle of the show, we were in an awful area. Awful area. There was a room that had got renovated that was on like the main drag of the Fort Worth Stockyards. And we packed up, we being just me, I was by myself, but our whole room that I was in packed up and moved in the middle of the show to a different location. Now, mind you, it took me a day and a half at least to get that booth set up the first time. The second time, I had like 4 hours. It was insane and I lost so much footage when we moved. And after that long day, I drive back to the hotel and I always parked right in front of my trailer so that nobody could steal it. And it's gone. Like straight up gone. And I'm like, oh my God, what in the world happened? So I called 911 and I call my husband and I, get a report going and I didn't think I was ever going to see it. Luckily, we knew some people that were down there that had bought a trailer And Brent and Roz Sutton, they're like, hey, you can use this trailer if you want to get all your stuff home. And that's what we did. So we hauled a trailer home for them, put all of our stuff in it, and then we dropped it off to them over Christmas. But I didn't think that I was ever going to see that trailer again. Like, it was another thing that was just so disheartening. It's like I put all this work into this and the show's already not going amazing. And then somebody decides to come and steal my trailer. Like, you've got to be freaking kidding me. So, what was left in there was like extra like show stuff. Like, I had some cowhides in there. I had some boxes that were just like wrapped with wrapping paper, but there was like nothing in them. I had all of my extra checkout bags. I had like an extra rack, a couple extra Christmas trees, like that kind of stuff. And it wasn't anything that I like needed, but like I needed the freaking trailer to get home. So, couple months go by and it's like it's January. It's the middle of January and I get a phone call from somebody in Texas and I'm like, wonder who this is. So I answer it and they're like, "Hi, is this Halie?" And I'm like, "Yes, this is Halie. Do you have an H&H enclosed trailer?" And I was like, "Well, I used to. I don't anymore." "Well, we found it." And I'm like, "Oh, perfect. Well, can you get here in like 20 minutes to get it?" And I'm like, "No, sir. I live 17 hours away. That's not going to happen." So they ended up calling a big, huge wrecker. And the trailer was abandoned behind an abandoned house in Dallas. And then they realized that they couldn't get the big wrecker back there to hook the trailer up. So then they just send a normal pickup. So I had to pay 2 towing fees and then the lot charge from the Dallas Police Department. And my husband and one of his friends took off and went down there and picked it up for me. But that was just another thing that you just never think that these things are going to happen in business. Like, it's just not something that comes to mind that yes, this is exactly what's going to happen in my business. And I feel like sometimes the the downs are so hard to deal with because I had so much invested into that business, like so much time, so much of my heart. Like, I called it my third baby sometimes because it was. I mean, I started it from $150 and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it. And the lows hurt, and they hurt hard. So, that one was another one that hurt hard. So, after that, I kinda just kept doing what I was doing, selling stuff online, going to bigger shows, and then in about the spring of 2022, I just I felt that the boutique was becoming a job. And while the business was making over 6 figures every year, I felt in my heart that I am working entirely too hard at this for it to just be a job. Like, I'm putting too much time into it and I have this personality to where when I start something, I go hard. I go hard at it and I give it my all and you get everything from me. When I get to the point to where I'm questioning like what am I doing? Is this really worth it? It doesn't feel right. I will just let it go. And I looked at it and I'm like, you built this. You built a business from nothing. And you can't just let this go. You can't just like walk away and close it down. I couldn't do it. I did not want to see the brand die. I didn't. And that's it. And then I had to sit with it for a little bit. And in July of 2022 is when I finally decided that I needed to sell. That in order to keep the business going and not liquidate, that I needed to sell. So I had one more big show. High school nationals was in Gillette, Wyoming. So I had already planned to go there. So that was going to be my one last show. So I packed everything up and I went for one more show, and after that, I listed her for sale. And it took a little bit to find the right buyer. I definitely had some negotiations with a few, but I feel like it is with the perfect person now. So I sold in September of 2022 to Shanna and Kyle Kalhoff, and they are actually from Wyoming. So that made my heart happy. And the transition's been really good. She took it over. We did some training, and it wasn't until I was starting to teach like all of my day-to-day operations and everything that I did that you realize just all of the knowledge that you have in all of the little things that you figured out and that you had to do, like website design to product upload to social media management. There was just shipping. There was just so much that went into it. And I did all the parts. I did all of the parts by myself. And that's when you kind of feel good about yourself, really. You're like, yeah, I accomplished this and I did all of these things and I did it by myself. So that was it was bittersweet though. Like, I don't wanna tell you that I sold it and, went and celebrated and then everything was, like, perfect after it. And that's what I thought was gonna happen. Like, I knew in my heart it was time to sell it, and I was very happy that I did sell it, but I did not take into account the fact that I talked with the ladies in that group every day. Like, they became my friends, and they were just gone. I worked from home. So sometimes they were my friends. They were the ones that I was talking to. They were the ones that were cheering me on. I was cheering them on. And it was sad and it was hard to not be there talking with them every day. I mean, that was the one thing that really, really, really surprised me and was hard. Some of them ladies, I will still see them and I still get to talk to them, and they held a very special place in my heart. So if any of my Rusty Soul ladies are listening to this right now, please know that I think about you guys all very much and I miss you. And that was the hardest part about selling Rusty Soul, was not being able to interact with you guys every day. So after I sold, I went from going 9-0 to not having hardly anything to do. That was another hard part of the transition. And simply put, I got bored. I completely got bored. I did not have enough things to do, and it took a toll on me mentally. I'm not going to lie. And it wasn't something that necessarily happened like right away. It was something that kind of snowballed, and then I found myself in a dark place. And I had to dig myself out of that dark place. But from that dark place came this podcast. And it's something that I had wanted to do for a while, and I actually considered doing a true crime podcast, funny story, but I don't like researching. I like to talk. I like to talk with people. I like to hear their stories. I do not like to sit and I do not like to research. And I also did not think that I could mentally handle to dive into the deep dark places of some people's brains. Like, I love to listen to true crime podcasts, but it wasn't right for me. And like I said, this podcast came out of my dark place. And business is what I like. And so I built this podcast around talking with other business owners. And I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And because of this, I now have other ideas that are brewing in my brain that I'm excited about, and I can't wait to see how they come together. And the path that I'm on right now truly shows that. So I always end podcasts with the same thing. If you could give yourself some advice, what would it be? So if I could go back to 2015 Halie and give her some advice. I would have two things to tell her. Is one, I know you have a tendency to just jump in feet first and figure the rest out later, but a little bit of research into the retail industry might not be a bad thing. So there's a lot that goes into retail that I had to figure out the hard way. And had I done just a little bit of researching, it would have made me just just a little bit easier on myself. And the other thing that I would tell myself is sometimes you need to put your blinders on. The retail world can sometimes be catty, and it can be easy to get caught in the comparison trap, I've noticed. And that was one thing that happened with me sometimes, is I would find myself comparing how my boutique was to other boutiques, and it did not do any good unless you're thinking of it from a positive mindset of how can I take what they're doing and apply it to my business in a positive way. It did absolutely no good. So that's one thing that I've definitely done with this podcast is put my blinders on, maybe a little too much, but that's besides the point. And just pay attention to what Haley's doing and what is important to keeping this business what it's supposed to be. So, though I no longer own Rusty Soul, please go check it out. Rusty Soul WY is going to be the link to all the socials, and I will have them down below in the notes because, like I told you, I built that. I built that from the ground up, and I would love for you to go look at it, support Shanna. She's doing really, really, really good things with it. So, if you like my outfit, of course, I got it from Rusty Soul. So it's an old one. I doubt it's in stock anymore, but I had to put some of my Rusty Soul goods on because, of this interview. So if you listen when I do my outro, the website provider that I used when I had Rusty Soul was Shopify. And there's been so many times where I've had to edit myself out because I say Shopify instead of Spotify. So if you hear me really, really, really enunciate the word Spotify, that is why, because my brain instantly wants to say Shopify because I talked about Shopify for like 7 years. And that's where it defects too. But so there's a funny story. If you listen to some of the first episodes, you'll definitely be able to hear me almost say Shopify. So oh goodness. Okay. That is all that I have for today's episode. Thank you for joining me. If you would like to watch the video version of it, you can find it in the link below or search Brassy Business Podcast on YouTube. Make sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and look us up on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok so we can stay in touch. Have a great day, and I will see you next week.